Okay. Do some shoulder work. Shoulder work doesn't hurt my shoulders.
And then in the southwestern of London, some of those boroughs have got very low rates. So the problem with London is, A, it's about a third of the UK economy, so flattening it is desperate, not just for London, but for everybody else. And the other thing is that the London boroughs, many of them, are bigger than most of the towns in the UK, and very identifiably different. So there needs, going forward, I think, to be more flexibility about London, because it is just very big, but not all the same, and that's the key thing. But definitely,
just to give you the figures, London, I think, in the average cases per 100,000 over the last 7 days, 187. The England-wide average is higher than that, 217. Your borough, Waltham Forest, 207, so not far from the national average. And as you say, other ones, particularly
much lower,
southwest at the moment, are in very high areas. But the problem with doing it borough by borough, which doesn't appear to be what the government's done, is that, of course, it's a densely packed area and people move around between boroughs all the time.
Yeah, they move around between areas. I mean, Manchester, Liverpool, all those places. You run that issue every time you do this. I was keen
if you're close together, more packed together, it's more inevitable.
Well, it is, but at the same time, look at two different boroughs next door to each other, and many of those have very different rates. That demonstrates to you that in some of these communities, crossover. But the key thing I want to make about London is, London, I'm pleased in Tier 2, if that's the case. I would like to see it in due course go to Tier 1, because London is a huge driver of economic prosperity for the whole of the UK. It's a very peculiar setup, but just the way it is, London is very, very important. If you go to the West End, which is about 4% of GDP, it's flat. I think I can see the pictures there that look to me like they're the West End. So you can see straight away what is a real engine, a driver of economic growth, is dead at the moment. And the real problem is that if London doesn't get going, the rest of the UK doesn't get going. And this is the big challenge, to get the balance between getting the economics right and getting control of the virus right. And we've had a big lockdown. And one thing we don't know, for example, in the next 5 or 6 days, is we've only just begun to see the effects of the lockdown as it stands in this last week. And so for another 5 or 6 days, if this lockdown is doing what the government says it does, then many of these figures you're seeing now will be lower in many of those areas. So the question will be, is the government flexible enough in a week and a half's time to look again at the tiering and see whether they can bring some of those areas in the north, for example, down, and even some of the areas like London into a Tier 1 to try and get the economics going. One comment I would make, I think we've got very obsessed about Christmas, and I would rather have seen a lower level of tiering with perhaps a lower expectation over Christmas, because that would be more consistent. Yes, it's lovely to see all the families and extended families, etc., but I think the important thing is not to kind of lurch back again into a lockdown or into Christmas. That's the key problem that we face.
There are some who argue that this whole idea of tiering and compulsory restrictions on people's behaviour is the wrong approach. People who supported the so-called Great Barrington Declaration, which has now been taken up by Nigel Farage, amongst others. Do you think they're right or wrong?
Balance. I personally was very concerned with going to lockdown. The figures showed up again, where all the tiering figures were coming through, that it had got control, that it had started to flatten.
We're about to run out of battery in a sec. Let's just do a little. Saw some guy on YouTube do a balance.
If we go lurching into lockdowns, that's a problem. Secondly, I think we've got to be very careful about being overzealous in trying to dictate to people. People are, for the most part, sensible. They will do the right thing. So what to do, that's a case of explaining to them. But if we start doing what I saw outside the House of Commons the other day, 5 policemen, spreading a woman of 72 and arresting her and chucking her in the back of a van, this is over the top. And we've got to be very careful that we don't trash what are normal civil liberties in the pursuit of trying to control this virus. We need to take people with us. If they start to believe, as some do already, that we are using this as a way of trying to sort of take control beyond normal circumstances and beyond what is necessary, then we will simply get a corruption that goes in the opposite direction, and people will start to say, well, you know, I'm not going to bother. So we need people to cooperate to do the right thing, and if they do the right thing, then we're okay, as long as they don't feel like they're being beaten about the head on it.
Dr. Smith, thank you very much indeed for joining us. London MP now, Tier 3 are the tightest restrictions. We now know areas going
Has to be done.